Well, hello and welcome to Raj Sabha TV. You're watching discussion today with your host Rajat Kane. In this episode, we'll discuss latest move by the government to procure 83 Tejas fighter aircrafts in what is also seen as a boost to self-reliance. These aircrafts are designed by the Aeronautical Development Agency under the Department of Defense Research and Development and will be manufactured by the HAL, that is Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. It will further be an improvement over the earlier version of the fighter aircraft, that is Mk1. The cabinet met under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Modi in New Delhi on 13 January and approved the procurement of 73 LCA, that's light combat aircraft Tejas Mk1A fighter aircrafts and 10 LCA Tejas Mk1 trainer aircraft at the cost of 45,696 crore along with design and development of infrastructure. So how will this move add to our arsenal and strengthen it further? To discuss further on this issue, we are joined with a very important panel of guests who are defense experts. We are joined with a senior journalist, he's senior editor, Economic Times, Manu Pabi. Manu, thanks for joining us. And we have with us as defense expert, Air Vice Marshal retired, PK Srivastav. Well, many thanks, sir, for joining us. Let me start with you, Air Vice Marshal Srivastav. Sir, what this induction of 83, or for the future induction of 83 Tejas means for India?
Rajat, I would say that this is one of the landmark decision which has been taken because it is one of the largest order which has been placed, a single order which has been placed on an Indian entity.
Right.
Apart from that, it is a confluence of Indian Air Force and the public sector and our own private sector, which will come in play in large numbers. That Air Force has placed its faith into the system. And I would say this is the paradigm shift because now the aircraft are in very large numbers. Together, they become 123 aircraft and 123 fighter aircraft in Indian Air Force of one type is a huge number, and I think potentially it is going to get into Mark II version also.
Okay.
And if that comes through, it's a very, very large number we are talking about. With this large number being in the Indian Air Force, what we are talking about are defense aerospace industrial base should survive and should get activated with all the R&D and other inputs coming in for coming 4 decades minimum, because that's going to do. So it's a kind of the right kickstart which we wanted for a fighter aircraft to come into play. But we have our own fears and expectations. There are fears that there are so many things placed on the shoulders of this order. This aircraft has not flown yet. That is one of the things. So it is expected that all the individual modules have flown standalone, so probably they come in play. This also brings in what we call a future war fighting capability into play, for which we need ISA radar, that is our airborne electronic scan array radar.
Right.
We also will be having our own EW suite. We'll also be having our own TRS kind of thing, like maintenance turnaround. So there have been 40 improvements which have been done, wherein you can do turn around this aircraft from one sortie to another very quickly. And this is a very important factor during the combat deployment, because number of sorties per day, whatever you can do, is the potency of the aircraft. And the maintainability, that is one of the factors which has been now improved in this version. That's very big. And then mid-air refueling, all these things coming up, and the kind of indigenous content which is promised to go up beyond 60%, that's a very good expectation, good thing to place a bet on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But of course, there are a lot of things to be done, and they need to be fine-tuned, they need to be worked into. So those fears and expectations will continue. It's a kind of thing. But this order by itself is a watershed event in our aviation history for the fighters in our country, and it should be accordingly welcome. It's a very big welcome step, and we would expect and pray that it succeeds in totality as per the expectations of the Indian Air Force, because we'll be using this aircraft in net-centric warfare kind of context as the future comes in. So this aircraft also has a software-defined radio. So with all that things coming in together, it is going to be a very potent aircraft, and we wish that it happens. and the timelines are very, I would say, very tight. HAL would have to really pull up its socks and show that it can do it. And gone are the era when we used to talk only about delays and delays and delays.
Right. Vice Marshal, many thanks for your opening remarks. So we'll certainly come back and explore the indigenous dimension just mentioned. Manu Pabi, like your opening remarks, I mean, it's time we had these fleet inducted into our defense arsenal. Please go on.
See, I totally agree with the Air Vice Marshal. He's really summed it up well. Beyond that, I would like to say, it's a watershed moment for a simple reason that it is not just HAL or DRDO which is going to benefit from this.
Yes.
There are 570 Indian vendors spread across the country, from Bangalore to Delhi to Mumbai, down south. These are small companies ranging from, people who may be making small rubber parts to people who are doing wire harnesses to more complex systems which are going into the aircraft. And we're talking about the big companies. We have L&T, Tata, and some of the other big companies also contributing to the aircraft. So the smaller ones, these are the ones which are really important if you have to emerge with the aeronautical ecosystem. And I think the ambition is not just to have this aircraft in the Indian Air Force. 123 is a good number. See, the Indian Air Force is a very good test bed for similar forces across the world. Our requirements are so unique, from operations in Ladakh to operations down at the sea level to desert.
Right.
All range of atmosphere, all range of terrain is covered when we select a system. The LCA Tejas is meant for operations in all conditions, all weather situations and terrain. So I think it will also have a good potential for exports. We are already talking to friendly nations for the export of this aircraft. I think Malaysia is a country which we have had advanced discussions with. The placement of this order is a big sign of confidence that the Air Force has placed in its own industry that we can deliver. And the enhancements on the aircraft, the new radar, enhanced protection against electronic warfare, and I think integration of some very interesting new missiles, including the Indian missile, the Astra long-range air-to-air missile, which is very potent. I think this makes the aircraft a very compelling buy for the cost at which it is. And I think we will see this turning into an ecosystem of aviation companies which will continue over the next 10 years to keep producing parts. Because this followed by the LCA Mark II, which we hope 180 to 200 corder will be placed. And following that, these smaller companies can then explore the global markets for exports, not for the aircraft, small parts. They can. Why not an Indian company? Why can't they build systems for the F-18 in the US? They can compete in global bids because they can have cost-effective options. They can really go out there. So I think it's a huge deal for the Indian ecosystem, and I hope to see it go on timelines as the Air Vice Marshal says, of course.
Absolutely. Many thanks, Manu, for your remarks. Certainly, we'll come back further to you. Yes, Air Vice Marshal Srivastava, we were just talking about the self-reliant dimension to it. That's something which even Union Defence Minister said, and also like Manu elucidated how it will add further to several key makers here when it comes to the indigenous part of it. So, per you, I mean, is it like, I mean, if we expand the scope beyond the defence and strategy, is it like how does being self-reliant in the defence industry help India or country like India?
So I would say that fighter aircraft is considered to be the threshold of technologies as far as a country is concerned.
Right.
And most of the technologies that flow out, if you master the technology for the fighter aircraft, let's say in terms of trans-receive module, TR modules needed for the ISA radar, then it will have direct impact on the AVAX, which is already going on project. So there are many projects which are going on. It's going to impact everything. You're going to master the technology in terms of carbon composites. You're going to master technology in terms of your Astra. So all these mastering of the technologies, they all come together and they have a huge impact on the industrial base, be it civil, military, civil aviation, military aviation, otherwise also in terms of photography and other things. So it'll all spawn out. This is how elsewhere it has happened. So this one thing which is called indigenous is not indigenous in respect of LCA itself.
Right.
What Mark said, export potential. Then as you're taking and you're moving towards AMCA, your advanced medium combat aircraft, our faith into that developing into a potent weapon will also improve because we are mastering these technologies. These are technologies which need to be innovated, improved, enhanced, and then put into the next version, next version, next version. And as far as the combat deployment is concerned, which people will now, at the time, we fear that we'll be able to produce in those numbers or not. The challenge will come in numbers, our production efficiencies, our production effectiveness. How are we going to manage that? So that management will become very crucial for public sector, that is HL in this case, and other players will come in play. Those are the private sector players or the other public sector players, they'll come in play. All that environment will get energized. And when the numbers are large, they have their threshold impact on that.
Yes, absolutely.
But large
That is
numbers
true.
motivate large number of industries to do into it. They know now it is a thing which is going to stay. It is not one of those kinds of orders which are given to motivate a particular kind of DRDO project. So now it's an industrial base because it's going to go into a very large number. Nearly 10% of the Indian Air Force strength, 15%. So if 15% aircraft belong to one genre, the genre has to do very well. It has to do. So I think the forces will synergize. Even Air Force will be very, very keen that it succeeds. So they'll give in all inputs. DRDO will put in all its might behind it. Private industry will put in all its might behind it. And so public sector. So that is the thing which is going to cross that critical level, what we call, where you escape the gravitation field and you say, okay, now we are in the domain where we can really do things as well. So I'm sure this is not only going to work well for this project, this is going to also work well for next project. And AMCA is one of those ambitious things. Timelines there are also very ambitious. And this will help there. And I'm sure this time, my experience doesn't foretell me of 40, 45 years that yes, HL has been really a delivery platform where we got timely deliveries. Things have been delayed. But now I'm sure that they have also learned, the RDO has learned, all of us have learned, and it's going to move as per timelines which are giving now because we are more, we are more experienced about it. We know what we can do, what we can't do. A lot of standalone modules are already ready. One I mentioned to you about the TR. LRD is working very hard on the radar. Software-defined radio has been going on for a long time. Our net-centric warfare, all our directives, doctrines are coming up. The network has come up. So everything is falling in place. This is how these synergetic thing will happen. And that's how you another few years later, you find yourself standing on the platform where you can fight the future wars very easily or comfortably. And that's what we need, this need of that hour. So I would say LCA, this order, not only is biggest in terms of money, it is also biggest in terms of aspirations, our hopes, and our expectations.
Right. That's pretty well summarized. Manu Pabi, in your both your opening remarks, both yours and Air Vice Marshal's opening remarks, you mentioned that it is a watershed moment for the Indian Air Force. Now, was the induction of such a fleet one thing for some time? If we talk of defense arsenal per se, and I mean, what perhaps were the reason of this delay, if at all there was any delay?
So there's no doubt there has been a massive delay in the program, and the Indian Air Force has seen reducing combat numbers. It's a matter of record. The Air Force Chief himself has talked about this, numbers degrading. The reason was that the LCA went through a lot of teething problems, and there was a lack of clarity or long-term vision behind the program. So you saw in between when the LCA was struggling initially, the Air Force did not perhaps handhold it as much as it should have. And there's a lot of reliance on imports. But something seems to have shifted in the past 5 to 6 years, I think there was a lot of push, of course, from the political establishment for a Make in India project, and this was a cornerstone for that. The Air Force also came to a realization that perhaps the future is to have your own aircraft. And I think in the past 3-4 years, we've seen the Air Force really stand behind HAL and DRDO, which is manufacturing the aircraft. They have made suggestions on how it can be improved. And in fact, the LCA Mark 1A in particular is a variant which the Air Force has a lot of say in. So the radar, the EW suite, the other enhancements which have been put in are all put in because of the Air Force's insistence. The problem that we used to face in the past and why we used to see the delays is that Air Force would put a request out for an enhancement. By the time the enhancement would get developed and showcased, it would be outdated. So we were in a very bad, vicious cycle in the past, about a decade ago, where the LCA was being constantly improved, but was not meeting the standards of the Air Force. So I think the call was taken that right now let's lock it, let's do it. So that's why we're seeing different variants. Mark 1A is just one order. The thing will be Mark 2, in which you will have higher thrust engines. You will have much more enhancements, more weapons carrying capacity. And as the Air Vice Marshal was saying, this is a continuation. We will have the AMCA after this, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, which will again be the backbone. So you see that this 83 order has just kick-started the system. Now, hopefully, if things stay on track as we expect them to, you will see India producing at least 15 to 20 fighter aircraft every year indigenously. And so enhancements we earlier could not really, match up on can be done quickly on the go. That's the advantage of having your own ecosystem, your own private sector, your own PSU who's sitting down there and helping you out do things. So I think that delay that you talked about, it was a thing of the past. We are very hopeful now. I mean, if it doesn't happen now, I don't know when it will happen. It's a very hopeful moment. I think we are on the right track finally on this. And I think the next 3 to 4 years are going to be critical because both the private and public sector have to deliver now. They have been given the money, the chance, the opportunity they have been waiting for a long time. And I think everyone is looking at them for a good and quick delivery.
Right. Manupami, let me just pick your expertise in terms of statistics here. You just mentioned that there has been the push in the indigenous production. I mean, could you just elucidate as to what has been different, say, in the past 5-6 years, or perhaps in last decade, comparing that to the earlier decades?
See, this government has the motto of Make in India. That was a motto which they really came up with, and defense was supposed to be the cornerstone for that. So we've seen a push for a lot of systems, not just this. The Akash system, which the Air Vice Marshal is very familiar with, that is being ordered in numbers. We have the Pinaka system for the army, which has been ordered in larger numbers. We have an ongoing program of towed guns. They are the ATAGS guns, which are made by Indian companies. We have had the K9 Vajra by the Indian L&T, which has made it. So we have seen a lot of programs which are made in India getting a push more than a direct import.
Yeah, Air Vice Marshal Srivastava, sir, just talking further on what senior journalist Manupami was saying about there has been push from the government side in terms of the indigenous development of the defense expertise and of course the production. Now, Make in India, and now we have the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative. How far you think it will go for enhancing our defense or strengthening further our defense reserves as well as the arsenal?
So I sincerely feel that this is going to be a springboard for our Atmanirbharta, from where we launch ourselves. Because if we succeed in this, we'll succeed in the rest. The technologies will get harnessed. What we need to now really work out well, if you really ask me, where most of the fear lies, is how do we improve the numbers, that is production per year. Currently, for the HL, it is 8 aircraft per annum. I know the second line is there, so it'll be 16. That's what the second line is. Third line is likely to come up by 23, 24.
Okay.
So we can have a capacity of up to 24 aircraft per year. And that's what HL is planning for. That's what is in the public domain too. So that happens in the year 23, 24. So if we can really match up all this and get this art and science clear and into the system, then what Manu was explaining very clearly, that if you have your own aircraft, that means the fighter aircraft belongs to you. You have your own weapon, that is Astra, which is your BVR weapon. That's with you. You have your net centricity established on the ground. That means you can do now net centricity. You have your own software-defined radio. Imagine the picture, and you have your own Netra, AVAX, the force multiplier, which is going to give you the inputs for your war fighting. So the whole environment is getting under indigenous kind of control. And that's where the enhancements, the improvements, if you want to improve or you feel that something is lacking, which he brought out very nicely, it has to go to the OEM. OEM has to take a cost of it, and then it comes back. But with our own industry, it can be done in a very shorter loop. The moment you observe some deficiency, you can act upon it very quickly. So innovations can be coming very far at a very fast pace, more than we ever expect. So you need to cross that threshold for anything else to happen at a speedier level. And that's what we think. With this order, we are sowing the seeds of those speeds which we need We are sowing the seeds of the technologies which we need. We are also sowing the seeds of our production efficiency and effectiveness. We
Right.
need to improve our methods. Maybe we have to bring in robotics in play. Maybe we have to bring in more of AI into play. But we'll do it if we have the task at hand. Now the task has come in numbers. Numbers were a big problem. I have faced it myself. The moment you have numbers, then many things get improved because there are processes, people are efficient, effective people are there. And I think DRDO in that sense is doing a good job. People are also doing a good job in their own R&D labs. I've seen private sector doing a very good job in their R&D labs. But the numbers and the orders are very important for anything to kickstart because after all, it's an industry. That's where the whole crunch lies. And that's what has been offered to the industry now. So now the challenge rests with the industry, led by system integrator, that the HL in this case. But the technologies are there. You need to harness them, and you have to have great management to harness it. So I hope that will happen, and I'm very, very hopeful on that count.
Manu, if we just talk of the production on the industrial side, I mean, having a fairly, let's not say aggressive defense production, but at least extremely innovative indigenous defense productivity and expertise, where does that places any nation per se to solve?
See, it is very important, to have your own defense ecosystem. Look at the example of China. Over the past 30 years, it has managed to create its own defense ecosystem. It is no longer dependent on imports any longer. And it is now an exporter. It exports weapons around our neighborhood. I think the change of policy that we have done, that, we are not only going to manufacture arms for ourselves, but we will also give it to friendly nations. So as a strategic, thing, it is very important to have your own industry, which is not dependent on anyone else. So you can, it's in terms of geopolitics, it is one of the most vital tools of your diplomacy, which you can have is, providing security to your neighbors or to friendly foreign nations.
Right.
And that is what lacking in India in the past. This government has, beyond Make in India, the second mantra has been exports, especially defense. So they have taken a policy decision to start exporting even lethal weapons because they think it's important. So once you have an ecosystem here which can produce an aircraft like this, we have some way to go at LCA, for example. We need to indigenize the engines also. That's a longer process. It will take some more time. So we have some more distance to go, but we're already reaching there. So we're at 60%. We need to go about 40% more, but that's the first bridge has been crossed. So once we do that, I think your strength as a nation increases if you have a robust defense ecosystem, which you can be a security provider for not just yourself, but for people around you. I think that's the way we're progressing. It's the way of the future.
Right. Manu, many thanks for joining us. Air Vice Marshal, just your closing remarks, just about the strengthening of the arsenal, having a very strong defense industry. So do we see ourselves moving towards enhancing exports of defense products, especially to the friendly countries?
I think I surely can see that and envision it that we'll be exporting very soon. But I'll wish in the concluding remarks that we become Atmanirbhar in aero engines too, for which a lot of things are being. And that is one thing which we are lacking. We need to now take that as a program and do it for the nation is the requirement. The moment we have that technology harnessed, I can tell you, Rajat, we are really on the go as far as exports are concerned.
Well, on that note, we'll sign off. Many thanks, sir, Mr. D.P. Srivastava for joining us. Many thanks, Manu Pabi, senior journalist, for joining us. So there we have, so clearly, as far as we see the induction of these indigenously manufactured Tejas light combat aircraft will definitely go a long way in not just enhancing our defense arsenal, but also reshaping our entire defense outlook in years to come. Well, many thanks for joining us and watching this edition of Discussion today. Keep watching RSTV for more. Thank you and goodbye.